The existential challenge that we face has to do with a warming planet. And your generation is the one that's going to be most severely affected. Now, the United States and other highly industrialized developed countries over the last 50, 100 years have been pumping up carbon emissions into the atmosphere. And slowly, this has been building up, and it is warming the planet. And we may be reaching a tipping point in which, if we do not solve this problem soon, it will spin out of control and change weather patterns in ways that we can't anticipate.
So the heat island effect means that in the urban populations and urban areas, we have the temperatures much higher than around the cities where we have trees and forests. And obviously, even within Los Angeles, we can compare neighborhoods that have a lot of trees, a lot of vegetation, such as Westwood, Brentwood, Beverly Hills. And if you go to African American communities, they don't have those trees. They do not have shade. They do not have the most efficient technologies for construction of their homes.
The urban heat island effect is caused by the removal of the natural vegetation in an area and replaced with hardened surfaces such as asphalt and concrete. The hardened surfaces absorb the heat rays, which cause a warmer air temperature because the atmosphere is heated from the ground up. Many cities are faced with the urban heat island effects. However, the African American community is highly vulnerable to the effects because the amount of vegetation is significantly lower than other cities.
This month, the Space Shuttle Endeavour will take off from Florida's Kennedy Space Center for its last flight to Los Angeles. Soon after, it will travel the final miles on the ground to its new home, and that's where the controversy begins. CNN's Casey Wine is joining us now. Casey, explain what's going on here, the problem.
Well, Wolf, here's the problem. In front of me is one of the hundreds of trees, what's left of one of the hundreds of trees that are being cut down to clear a path for the Space Shuttle Endeavour's final trip. The Space Shuttle Endeavour will begin the final leg of its final journey here at Los Angeles International Airport. It will then take a 12-mile trip along city streets to the California Science Center. But even before the trip starts, it's already causing a lot of controversy. The main reason, all of these trees you see here and hundreds of others throughout the city are being taken out to make room for the space shuttle. Along the route, Endeavour will pass famous LA landmarks like Randy's Donuts, and it will pass over the infamous 405 freeway. It can't go on the freeway because it's too big to fit under freeway overpasses. Its first stop will be in the city of Inglewood, where more than 130 trees already have been cut down. The mayor says it's a good deal for the city.
You know, you got Bel Air, Beverly Hills, Westwood, whatever you call that over there too. It's all a big old circle of money right here, and they will not stand for the trees being gone. Cut a tree down here, you're in a lot of trouble unless you replace it. Most of the small trees you see around here used to be big trees that got cut down and had to be replaced.
Trees offer a solution to the issue of pollution in the environment. Without the carbon dioxide and oxygen exchanged from trees, hypoxia forms in the brain and tissues of the body, leading to confusion, shortness of breath, and death.
Why money comes up here to these parts and not down there? You go find out from them guys, them fat cats with them ties on, and see where that money is. Because it's there. Why isn't it getting there? I don't know.
Dark-colored asphalt absorbs between 80 and 95% of the sun's rays. The sun heats up the streets themselves and the entire surrounding area. When temperatures in Southern California rise above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, surface temperatures on the asphalt roads which are made of poisonous crude oil, can climb to 150 degrees, causing the release of chemicals, which the EPA says can add up to 22 degrees Fahrenheit to the average air temperature in a city, compared to the surrounding area.
This is the hottest part of the city of Los Angeles.
Councilman Bob Blumenfield is referring to Jordan Street in Canoga Park, which officials say is one of the hottest neighborhoods in Los Angeles. With street surfaces hitting up to 160 degrees, the city of LA is taking action to cool things down with a new Cool Pavement pilot program. It involves treating streets with a coating that helps lower the temperature of the street.
The hot sun beats down on the black asphalt, creates this heat island effect, and ultimately we are all the victims of that. The hope, though, is that by reflecting more light, the lighter pavement coating will keep the air and the surrounding street cooler and release less heat into our neighborhoods.
The city of Los Angeles is spending approximately $40,000 per mile to pave the streets white. However, there has been no announcement of climate change initiative for African American communities.
And that's what we see in case of Heat Island as well, that some communities are getting exposed to all the consequences that come from Heat Island and all the causes that cause Heat Island more in comparison to other communities that live in the same city. And this is mostly to do with, something that we refer to as a multi-dimensional poverty or intersectionality, which is basically looking at how different communities are disadvantaged in some sense.
68% of African Americans live within 30 miles of a coal plant, which is one of the biggest sources of carbon pollution in America. This is directly linked to African American children having higher rates of asthma, with a rate of 1 in 6 children, compared to the nationwide rate of 1 in 10 amongst other children.
How often polluting facilities end up in these locations because of these low rental values, because these communities do not have the ability or the power to protest and to disagree and to push back.
There is evidence supporting that trees promote strong community ties, improve physical and mental health, minimize incidents of abuse and neglect of children, and decrease dependence on social services.
The effect on the kids is the most dire and negative effect that we observe right now. For example, a lot of schools in Los Angeles are located within 1 mile of a freeway, which adds air pollution from transportation to the heat island effect. And we have a lot of kids on those playgrounds being exposed to that pollution, being deprived of clean, fresh air. So they have to breathe polluted air. And the USC now does extensive research showing the effect of air pollution and heat on such previously not connected diseases such as even diabetes, obesity. In older people, it's dementia and other effects. Usually we did not connect those diseases to heat island, or we did not connect them to air pollution.
So you have the stress of obviously polluted air, you have the stress of not having access to parks and urban spaces where children can actually play. You have also those two things together sort of affect their ability, their health, and that is a very large consequence, because if a child is spending, say, 1/4 of the year basically dealing with respiratory problems and not being able to come to school or engage, at 100% level, then obviously that's going to have long-term consequences.
So in the concrete jungle, there's no way that people have of de-escalating anxiety, depression, and the mental health issues that they have. So concrete is just a barrier, a holder of the things that it contains, which are the people. So when you take people and children outside of the city and you take them to the mountains, or you have them expose them to parks with green trees and grass, then they get a chance to become a part of themselves and see who they really are. And they get a chance to de-escalate.
So my name is Catherine Kokarnik, and I am a co-director of the Garden School Foundation, a nonprofit that's based here in Los Angeles. And we started back in 2005 when we were really looking at our schools, and the community came together and they decided that they wanted something better and something more than just the cemented play yard. And so they got together, they raised funds, and they got the permits, and they ripped out all of this asphalt so that way they could actually plant an outdoor classroom, and they could have this space where community comes together, where teachers and students come together, and families can really have another opportunity or a different opportunity to get outside and to explore nature and to plant seeds and watch them grow. And not just to be learning that in the classroom, but to take it out in the environment where they can tend to it, they can care about it. And so the nonprofit was birthed out of this need to interact with the earth again.
There's a lot of things that come from trees that people don't. That tree right there, it's a camphor tree. This tree right here is a camphor tree. When I was a kid, I didn't know nothing about no camphor tree, and I had 2 of them in front of my house. Camphor trees, you go to the drugstore and you get camphor-phenique when you hurt. Camphor-phenique, they never thought about it come from a tree. They got that tree over there is a ginkgo tree. Ginkgo tree is what people use. They take the fruits off of it, grind up the seeds and stuff, and it's for the brain. They call it ginkgo biloba. And you can buy it in the stores. Oh, they got so many different kind of trees that feed you and make you well. And a lot of them are in this park. But you got to also, you go down South Central, they're all up and down the streets. They're just not maintained that way. That's the thing. If a person likes them, they'll water them. Another person will let them just die off. They don't have it. They don't have that extra water to put out. And that makes a big difference when you're steady telling them, hey, we're on a drought, no more water. If we catch you watering on this day and not that day, these people up here don't even care about that. They don't. Okay, they'll water on their day, but they'll put 10,000 million gallons out there on their day. Yeah, so they wouldn't have to water for a week, really. But they'll do it every day because they can. And they won't care about no tickets. We're down there. Oh yeah, you ain't giving me no tickets. Not down, no. People don't want no tickets. Therefore, they got to be on the drought thing. So much water's hit the mountains now. You can't tell me there's no drought, but they still have it. They still have it.
Further sort of, pushing those communities into further degraded areas, further degraded lands, and then giving them less and less options to a healthy lifestyle, basically. And that, as we have already discussed, has a long-term consequence on how the community does in future. And so if these changes are not incorporated, then obviously they are getting more and more marginalized and disadvantaged.
I want our actions to be big enough to draw on the talents of all our people, men and women, rich and poor. I want to show her passionate, idealistic young generation that we care about their future. For I believe, in the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., that there is such a thing as being too late. And when it comes to climate change, that hour is almost upon us. But if we act here, if we act now, if we place our own short-term interests behind the air that our young people will breathe, and the food that they will eat, and the water that they will drink, and the hopes and dreams that sustain their lives, then we won't be too late for them. A world that is worthy of our children, a world that is marked not by conflict but by cooperation, and not by human suffering but by human progress. A world that's safer and more prosperous and more secure and more free than the one that we inherited. Let's get to work.